The vast emptiness of space stretched before the Arkship Aurora like an endless ocean of darkness, punctuated only by the distant twinkle of stars. In the command bridge, Captain Alina Voss stood silently, her eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing their trajectory through what the crew had come to call the Infinite Corridor, a remote region of the galaxy where the remnants of ancient technologies and dead civilizations mysteriously appeared. The year was 3457 AC, after conquest. Nearly 3 centuries since humanity had fled the Milky Way to escape the Great Annihilation. Now, the Aurora carried what might be the last 1,000 humans in existence, wandering through the cosmos in search of others like them. "Status report," Alina said, her voice calm despite the weight of responsibility that constantly pressed down on her shoulders. "Life support systems functioning at optimal capacity," replied Maihan, the ship's ecological physician. Her gentle voice belied the seriousness of her role, maintaining the delicate balance that kept everyone aboard alive. "Though I'm concerned about the decreasing efficiency in Sector 7, the artificial photosynthesis chambers are showing signs of strain." Alina nodded, making a mental note to allocate resources for repairs. Every system on the Aurora was precious. Each one represented a piece of humanity's collective knowledge, preserved against the void of extinction. "Navigation confirms we're maintaining course through the Infinite Corridor," added Jonas Greer, their chief pilot. Unlike Mai's measured tones, Jonas spoke with an energy that seemed at odds with their dire circumstances. His optimism had become a beacon for many in the crew. "Should reach the next survey point in approximately 72 hours. Alina's gaze drifted to the massive viewport that dominated the bridge's far wall. Beyond the reinforced glass lay their reality, emptiness, punctuated by distant stars that offered no welcome, no sanctuary. Somewhere among those countless points of light, Alina still believed there might be other human colonies, forgotten outposts that had somehow survived the cataclysm that had nearly erased humanity from existence. It was this belief that drove her, that had been instilled in her since childhood, when her father would tell her stories of Earth, the mythical homeworld none of them had ever seen. The legends spoke of blue oceans and green forests, of cities that stretched toward the sky, and of billions of humans living together in a single star system. Now, they were reduced to this, a single ship carrying the last remnants of a once great species. "Captain," Cade Peregrine's voice cut through her thoughts. The chief engineer rarely visited the bridge, preferring the logical sanctuary of his engine rooms to the emotional complexity of human interaction. "We need to discuss the energy allocation for the next cycle." Alina turned to face him. Cade stood rigidly, his tall frame somehow seeming brittle, as though made of glass rather than flesh and bone. His eyes, sharp and analytical, missed nothing. "Let's hear it," she said. "We're operating at 82% efficiency, which is remarkable given the age of our systems," Cade began, his words precise and measured. "However, the recent survey missions have depleted our reserves more than anticipated. If we continue at our current consumption rate, we'll need to find additional resources within the next 40 days. The daily reality of their existence, always counting, always measuring, always aware of exactly how close they were to disaster. This was what it meant to be human now, to exist on the knife edge of survival, with no margin for error." "Understood," Alina replied. "Jonas, adjust our course to include a detour to the Brahmas system. The scans showed potential for harvesting materials there." "Brahmas 9 is a desert wasteland," Jonas pointed out, though his fingers were already plotting the new course. "Not exactly a paradise vacation." "We don't need paradise," Alina said firmly. "We need resources." The daily rhythms of the Aurora continued as they had for decades, monitoring systems, maintaining the artificial ecology, surveying barren planets for anything that might help them survive another day. And beneath it all ran the current of hope, fragile but persistent, that they were not alone. That night, as she did every night, Alina retreated to her private quarters and activated the memorial wall, a digital display containing the faces of every crew member who had died since the Aurora's mission began. Their numbers had dwindled over the years, from the original complement of 1,500 to just under 1,000 now. Each face represented not just a loss of life, but a loss of genetic diversity, of skills, of human potential. The slow march toward extinction. She was about to deactivate the display when an urgent alert sounded. Frowning, she tapped her communication implant. "Captain DeBridge, what's happening?" "Captain," Jonas's voice came through, tense with excitement. "We're picking up a signal, an SOS beacon, originating from the edge of the infinite corridor." Alina felt her pulse quicken. "Human." "The encoding is consistent with old Earth protocols. The message." He hesitated. "It claims there's a forgotten human colony still in existence." For a moment, Alina couldn't speak. This was what they had been searching for, what had driven their endless journey through the stars. A forgotten colony. More humans. Hope. "Plot a course immediately," she ordered. "Captain," Cade's voice joined the channel. "The coordinates would take us directly through Centra Fleet territory." The Centra Fleet, a militarized trading consortium that viewed the Aurora not as the last repository of human heritage, but as a treasure trove of genetic technology to be exploited. Their last encounter had nearly ended in disaster. "Your orders, Captain?" Jonas asked. Alina closed her eyes, weighing the risks against the potential reward. 1,000 lives under her command, possibly the last humans in existence, against the chance to find more of their kind, to ensure their species wouldn't end with them. "Set course for the signal," she said finally. "But prepare defensive systems. If we encounter Centra, we'll need to be ready." As the Aurora altered its trajectory toward the mysterious SOS, the crew's mood shifted. Some, like Jonas, vibrated with hope and excitement. Others, particularly those who remembered their last encounter with Centra, moved with a tense anticipation of coming conflict. And throughout the ship, whispers spread. Could it be true? Were there really other humans waiting to be found? Alina knew she had placed all their lives on the uncertain promise of that signal. But what choice did she have? To ignore it would be to abandon hope itself. And without hope, humanity was already extinct. The journey to the coordinates would take them through 3 planetary systems before reaching the edge of the infinite corridor. 3 opportunities for disaster, or for the resources they desperately needed. 3 steps closer to either salvation or destruction. As the Aurora's engines hummed with renewed purpose, Alina stared into the vast darkness ahead and whispered the ancient prayer that had become her mantra. "Guide us through the night to the dawn that waits beyond." The first leg of their journey brought them to Brahmas 9, a desert world of shifting sands and electrical storms that raged across its barren surface. From orbit, it looked like a golden orb wrapped in silver lightning. Beautiful, but deadly. Atmospheric analysis shows high concentrations of conductive particles, Mai reported as they established orbit. Those storms are basically massive electrical discharges. Any shuttle we send down would be at risk. "We need those mineral deposits," Cade countered. "The scans show significant concentrations of rare elements we can use to repair our systems. Without them, we'll be operating at reduced capacity when we reach the signal coordinates." Alina studied the storm patterns swirling across the planet's surface. "How long until there's a break in the weather?" "That's the problem," Jonas said, manipulating the orbital display. "These storms are constant. They shift and change, but they never fully dissipate." The decision fell to her, as all decisions ultimately did. "Prepare an expedition team. We'll use the heavy extraction shuttle. It has the strongest electromagnetic shielding. Cade, you'll lead the team." The chief engineer nodded, already calculating the parameters for a successful mission in his head. I should go too, Mai said unexpectedly. If the storms affect our people, you'll need medical support on site. Alina hesitated. Risking Cade was bad enough. He was irreplaceable as their chief engineer. But Mai was equally valuable as their only fully trained ecological physician. We can't risk both of you, she began. With respect, Captain, Mai interrupted, her usually gentle voice firm. We can't risk losing team members because medical help is stuck in orbit. I've trained my assistants well, but none of them have field experience. In the end, Alina approved the expedition roster, Cade, Mai, and 5 crew members with expertise in mineral extraction and shuttle operation. As they prepared to depart, she met them in the launch bay. You have 8 hours, she told them. If you're not back by then, we'll assume conditions have become untenable and send a rescue team. Cade's expression remained impassive. We'll be back in 7. The extraction shuttle launched from the Aurora's bay, a tiny speck against the massive backdrop of Brahmas 9. Alina watched from the bridge as it descended toward the planet's turbulent atmosphere. Maintain continuous communication, she ordered the communications officer. I want to know the moment anything changes. For the first hour, the mission progressed as planned. The shuttle navigated through the upper layers of the atmosphere, its shields deflecting the weaker electrical discharges. On the surface, the team established a mining perimeter and began extracting the precious minerals they needed. Then everything went wrong. Captain, the communications officer called out. We're detecting a massive electrical storm forming directly over the expedition's position. On the main screen. Alina watched in horror as a swirling vortex of energy coalesced above the team's location. A storm far more powerful than anything they had detected from orbit. Warn them to evacuate immediately, she ordered. But the warning came too late. A massive electrical discharge struck the extraction site, and the communication link with the surface team dissolved into static. Signal lost, the communications officer reported, her voice tight with tension. Life signs? Alina demanded. Unclear. The storm is interfering with our sensors. For the next 6 hours, the bridge crew worked desperately to re-establish contact with the expedition. Alina refused to leave her post, even as the deadline for their return approached and then passed. Finally, as the 8th hour came to a close, the communications officer straightened in her seat. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. Cade's voice crackled through the speakers, distorted but unmistakable. Aurora, this is the extraction team. Request immediate retrieval. We have casualties. The shuttle that returned to the Aurora bore little resemblance to the one that had departed. Its hull was scorched and warped, the metal twisted by the force of the electrical discharges it had endured. Of the 7 crew members who had departed, only 5 returned alive. 2 had been lost when a secondary electrical surge had collapsed part of the mining site, burying them beneath tons of superheated sand before their companions could reach them. Mai worked tirelessly in the medical bay, treating the survivors for electrical burns and trauma. Cade, despite suffering injuries himself, delivered the extracted minerals to the engineering team before submitting to treatment. It was my responsibility, he told Alina when she visited him in the medical bay. I miscalculated the storm patterns. Those deaths are on me. The decision was mine, Alina countered. The responsibility is mine as well. But she knew that knowledge wouldn't ease his burden. In their precarious existence, every life lost was irreplaceable, not just as crew members, but as carriers of humanity's dwindling genetic diversity. That night, Alina added 2 more faces to the memorial wall, 2 more lights extinguished in humanity's fading constellation. Despite the tragedy on Brahmas 9, the Aurora continued its journey toward the mysterious SOS coordinates. Their next stop was Verona 4, a world of acidic swamps and toxic atmosphere that promised different challenges and different resources. The atmospheric composition is primarily sulfur compounds, Mai reported as they established orbit. Highly corrosive to standard equipment and lethal to unprotected humans. However, the biological compounds in those swamps could significantly enhance our ecological systems. "Do we risk another ground expedition?" Jonas asked, glancing at Alina. The loss at Brahmas 9 still weighed heavily on all of them, but the resources of Verona 4 were too valuable to ignore, especially with their life support systems showing increasing strain. "We'll send a smaller team," Alina decided. "Fully enclosed environmental suits and strict adherence to safety protocols. No unnecessary risks." This time, Mai led the expedition, accompanied by 3 specialists in biological extraction. Their mission was to collect samples from the swamps that could be used to revitalize the Aurora's struggling ecosystem. The extraction proceeded smoothly at first, with the team establishing a collection station at the edge of a vast acidic marsh. Then, disaster struck again. One of the specialists slipped on the treacherous terrain, falling into the caustic swamp. Though they were quickly pulled out, their environmental suit had been compromised. Acid began eating through the protective layers, threatening to reach the vulnerable human inside. Mai made a split-second decision. Using the emergency medical supplies she had brought, she cut away the contaminated sections of the suit and applied neutralizing compounds directly to the affected areas. It was a desperate measure that exposed her to the toxic atmosphere, but it saved the specialist's life. By the time the extraction team returned to the Aurora, both Mai and the injured specialist required immediate intensive care. The ecological physician had saved her patient at great cost to herself, suffering chemical burns that would take weeks to heal properly. In the medical bay, now under the direction of Mai's chief assistant, Alina stood beside the physician's bed. Mai's normally smooth skin was mottled with burn patches where the acid had touched her. "You took an unnecessary risk," Alina said quietly. Mai's eyes fluttered open. "No such thing as an unnecessary risk when it comes to saving a life, Captain. Every one of us is precious now." "And that includes you," Alina replied. "We need you, Mai. The entire crew depends on your knowledge." "Then, perhaps," Mai said with a weak smile, "you should ensure I have more time to train my successors properly. One physician isn't enough for 1,000 people, especially not in our circumstances." It was a gentle rebuke, but a valid one. Alina had been so focused on their immediate survival that longer-term planning had sometimes fallen by the wayside. Mai was right. They needed redundancy in critical positions. If they lost her, the consequences for the crew's health could be devastating. While Mai recovered, the Aurora continued its journey. The biological samples from Verona 4 were integrated into their ecological systems, strengthening the artificial environment that sustained them. But the incidents on both Brahmas 9 and Verona 4 had taken their toll on crew morale. Whispers began to circulate. Was this journey worth the cost? Were they chasing a phantom hope? Alina addressed the crew directly, standing before them in the central gathering space that served as both mess hall and assembly area. "We've suffered losses," she acknowledged. "We've endured hardships, and some of you are questioning whether we should continue toward the SOS coordinates." The silence that greeted her words confirmed her suspicions. "I understand your doubts, but remember why we're here. Not just to survive, but to ensure humanity itself survives. If there are others out there, other humans who have found a way to exist in this galaxy, then we owe it to our species to find them." "And if it's a trap," someone called out from the crowd, "or an ancient signal from a colony that died centuries ago?" Alina nodded, accepting the question. "Then we will have tried, and in trying, we will have honored the purpose for which the Aurora was built, to seek out others like us, to reunite what remains of humanity." Her words seemed to reassure some, but she could still see doubt in many faces. They needed something more tangible than hope to sustain them. Their third stop before reaching the SOS coordinates was Cora Delta, a world of ancient ruins that suggested a civilization had once thrived there. Unlike the previous two planets, Cora Delta had a breathable atmosphere and moderate temperatures, almost hospitable by the standards they had grown accustomed to. Preliminary scans suggest the ruins contain technology components we might be able to salvage, Cade reported. If we're lucky, we might find power sources or computational systems that could enhance our own. And if we're unlucky, Jonas asked, only half joking. Then we find nothing of value and continue on our way, Alina replied. But I doubt these ruins have survived for what appears to be millennia without containing something worth discovering. The expedition to Cora Delta was larger than the previous ones, comprising Cade, Jonas, and a team of specialists in archaeology and technology recovery. Alina, mindful of the disasters on the previous planets, established stricter safety protocols and more frequent check-ins. The ruins themselves were hauntingly beautiful, soaring structures of an iridescent material that seemed to change color with the angle of the light. The expedition team moved carefully through the ancient city, documenting everything they found and collecting artifacts that might prove useful. In the central complex, they discovered a chamber that appeared to be a repository of knowledge, walls covered in inscriptions and diagrams that their translation systems struggled to decipher. "It's a warning," Jonas said finally, as the computer finished its analysis of the inscriptions. "They're describing how their civilization ended, some kind of self-destruction." "What kind?" Alina asked over the communication link. "Not entirely clear," Jonas replied. "But there are references to what translates roughly as the severing of bonds and isolation that leads to death. And there's something else, a star map that seems to point directly to the coordinates of the SOS signal we're following." "Are you saying they knew about the location we're heading to?" Alina asked, feeling a chill despite the environmental controls of her suit. "Not just knew about it," Jonas said gravely. "They're warning against going there. The inscription says it presents a similar risk of annihilation." The discovery cast a shadow over the expedition's otherwise successful mission. They returned to the Aurora with valuable technological components and power sources that would significantly enhance their systems, but also with a warning they couldn't fully decipher. In the debriefing session, opinions were divided on how to interpret the ancient warning. "It could be referring to an entirely different threat," one of the archaeologists argued. "One specific to the civilization that built these ruins. We can't assume it applies to us. Or it could be a universal warning about a danger that destroyed them, and could destroy us as well," Cade countered. "We should at least consider altering our course." The decision, as always, fell to Alina. She studied the translated inscriptions and the star map that so precisely indicated their destination. "We continue as planned," she said finally. "But with heightened awareness. If this warning is relevant to us, we'll be prepared. If not, we can't afford to turn away from what might be the last human colony in the galaxy based on the cryptic warnings of a long-dead alien civilization." The crew accepted her decision, though with varying degrees of enthusiasm. As they prepared to depart Cora Delta and make the final push toward the SOS coordinates, an unexpected complication arose. "Captain," the sensor officer called out urgently, "we're detecting multiple vessels approaching from the direction of the Centra hegemony." Alina felt her heart sink. "Identification." "Confirmed Centra warships," the officer replied. 5 vessels, heavily armed. They've altered course to intercept us." The Centra fleet, precisely the complication they had hoped to avoid. Known throughout this region of space as ruthless traitors and opportunists, the Centra had long coveted the Aurora's genetic technology. They believed the Ark ship contained backup genetic codes that could be exploited for profit, selling designer lifeforms to the highest bidders across the galaxy. "Battle stations," Alina ordered. "Prepare defensive systems, but do not power weapons unless I give the command. Jonas, plot an evasive course that still keeps us on track for the SOS coordinates." "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. On screen, Alina said, straightening her posture. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the face of Commodore Vargas Delgado, a man whose features were as sharp as his reputation. His eyes, augmented with cybernetic enhancements that gave them an unnatural silver gleam, fixed on Alina with predatory intensity. Captain Voss, he said, his voice smooth and cultured despite the implicit threat of his presence. What a pleasant surprise to find the Aurora in our territory. We're passing through, Commodore, Alina replied evenly. We claim no territory and threaten none. We request free passage under the old accords. Delgado's smile did not reach his eyes. The old accords apply to recognized sovereign entities. Captain, the Aurora is, at best, a relic of a bygone era. At worst, it's a treasure ship carrying biological wealth that rightfully belongs to whoever can claim it. We carry the last confirmed survivors of humanity, Alina countered. Our genetic repository is not for sale or seizure. It's the heritage of an entire species. A species that destroyed itself, Delgado pointed out. Perhaps its genetic heritage would be better managed by those with a more pragmatic approach. The implication was clear. The Centra fleet intended to seize the Aurora, by force if necessary. What do you want, Commodore? Alina asked, though she already knew the answer. Surrender your vessel, Delgado said simply. In return, I offer sanctuary for your crew within Centra territory. You'll be well treated, I assure you. And if we refuse? Delgado's smile widened. Then we will be forced to take more direct action. Your ship is impressive, Captain, but it was not built for war. Mine were... Alina ended the transmission without responding to his ultimatum. Turning to her bridge crew, she saw the fear in their eyes, and beneath it, a resolute determination. Options, she asked. We can't outrun them, Jonas said immediately. Their ships are faster, and they've positioned themselves to cut off our escape routes. Can we fight? Alina turned to the tactical officer. Not directly, came the grim reply. Our defensive systems can withstand conventional attacks for a time, but their weapons are designed to disable rather than destroy. They want the Aurora intact. What about Cade's energy trap system? Alina asked, referring to a defensive mechanism the chief engineer had been developing. One that used the Aurora's power systems to create localized energy disruptions that could temporarily disable pursuing vessels. Untested in actual combat, Cade replied from his position in engineering. And using it would divert power from critical systems, including life support. We'd be gambling everything on an experimental defense. Alina weighed their limited options. Fighting was unlikely to succeed. Running was impossible. Surrendering would mean the end of their mission, and possibly the extinction of humanity as they knew it. Prepare the energy trap, she decided. Jonas, plot a course that brings us close to the Verona system's outer gas giant. We'll use its gravitational field to amplify the trap's effect. That's dangerously close to the planet's radiation belt, Jonas warned. We'll be inside our radiation shielding, Alina replied. And the Centra may not realize the danger until it's too late. As the Aurora altered course toward the Verona system, the Centra fleet followed, maintaining their pursuit formation. Delgado, evidently sensing a trap, dispatched a smaller vessel to cut off their escape route, a supply ship that had been retrofitted with military-grade weapons. They're moving into position, the tactical officer reported. The supply ship is on an intercept course. Hold steady, Alina ordered. Wait until we're in the optimal position relative to the gas giant. Tension mounted on the bridge as the Aurora approached the massive planet, its swirling storms visible even from a distance. The Centra ships maintained their pursuit, seemingly unaware of the trap being laid for them. Optimal position in 30 seconds, Jonas announced. Centra vessels are charging weapons, the tactical officer warned. They're preparing to fire. Shields at maximum, Alina ordered. Prepare to activate the energy trap on my mark. The first shots from the Centra vessels struck the Aurora's shields, causing the entire ship to shudder under the impact. Warning alarms blared across the bridge as systems reported damage. "Shield integrity at 78% and falling," the tactical officer called out. 20 seconds to optimal position, Jonas reported, his hands flying across the navigation controls. Another volley struck the Aurora, more powerful than the first. The lights flickered briefly as power was diverted to maintain the shields. "Shield integrity at 62%. 10 seconds!" The supply ship, now directly in their path, opened fire as well, its weapons targeting the Aurora's propulsion systems. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Mark. "Activating energy trap," Cade confirmed from engineering. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the space around the Aurora rippled with visible distortion as the ship's power systems released a carefully calculated burst of energy. The pulse, amplified by the gas giant's natural electromagnetic field, swept outward in all directions. The effect on the Centra vessels was immediate and devastating. Their systems, unprepared for the sudden energy surge, failed catastrophically. Lights went dark, weapons powered down, and propulsion systems shut off, leaving them drifting helplessly in space. "It worked!" Jonas exclaimed. "All Centra vessels are disabled." But the victory was short-lived. The supply ship, closer to the Aurora than the others, had taken the brunt of the energy pulse. Its reactor, destabilized by the surge, began to overload. "The supply ship's core is going critical," the tactical officer reported urgently. "Explosion imminent." "Evasive maneuvers," Alina ordered. "Maximum speed." Jonas fought to move the Aurora away from the doomed vessel, but they were too close. When the supply ship's reactor finally breached, the explosion tore through space with devastating force. The shockwave slammed into the Aurora, overwhelming its already weakened shields and tearing through the hull in multiple sections. "Hull breach in sections 12 through 15, the damage control officer shouted over the cacophony of alarms. "Emergency bulkheads activated." Casualties reported in all affected sections. Mai's assistant added from the medical bay. "Medical teams responding, but it's bad, Captain." The cost of their escape became clear in the hours that followed. 23 crew members had been lost in the explosion, either killed instantly or trapped in sections that had to be sealed off to prevent catastrophic decompression. Among the dead were key personnel from various departments, including 3 of Mai's medical staff and 2 of Cade's senior engineers. In the aftermath, as repair teams worked to stabilize the damaged sections and medical personnel tended to the injured, Alina confronted the weight of her decision. She had known the energy trap was a gamble, but she hadn't anticipated the supply ship's reactor failure or the devastating loss of life that had resulted. Cade found her in the observation lounge, staring out at the distant stars as the Aurora limped away from the Verona system. "I've completed the damage assessment," he said without preamble. "The primary systems are operational, but we've lost significant capacity in several key areas. Repairs will take weeks, possibly months, to complete fully." Alina nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "The crew is saying you made the right choice," Cade continued. "That, without the energy trap, we would all be prisoners of the Centra now, or worse." "Does that justify 23 lives?" Alina asked softly. "In our situation? Yes." Cade's voice was firm. "You preserved the mission. You kept the Aurora free. That was your duty as captain." "My duty is to protect this crew," Alina countered. "To ensure humanity's survival. How does losing 23 irreplaceable lives serve that goal?" "Because the alternative was losing everyone and everything," Cade replied. "The Centra would have stripped the Aurora of its genetic repository, exploited our technology, and dispersed the crew across their territories as cheap labor or worse. You prevented that." Alina knew he was right, logically. But logic offered little comfort when faced with the knowledge that her decisions had directly led to the deaths of people under her command. "We're still on course for the SOS coordinates," she said, after a long pause. "Despite everything, we're still going." "Because we have to," Cade said simply. "Because without that hope, what's left for us?" Indeed, what was left? A damaged ship, a dwindling crew, and the vast emptiness of space stretching out in all directions. Without the promise of finding others, of ensuring humanity's continuation beyond their fragile vessel, they were merely postponing the inevitable extinction of their species. The Aurora continued its journey toward the mysterious signal, its systems strained but functioning, its crew diminished but determined. And in the quiet hours between crisis and duty, Alina added 23 more faces to the memorial wall, each one a light extinguished in humanity's fading constellation. After weeks of travel, the Aurora finally reached the coordinates of the SOS signal. What they found was not a thriving colony or a bustling outpost of humanity, but a small, desolate planet with a toxic atmosphere, orbiting a dying star. "Radiation levels are off the charts," Mai reported from her position in the medical bay, where she had finally returned to duty. "Any expedition to the surface would require heavy shielding." "Life signs?" Alina asked, though she already suspected the answer. "None that we can detect," came the reply. "But there are artificial structures visible on the surface. Some kind of settlement, long abandoned." The SOS signal continued to broadcast from the planet's surface, an automated beacon that had been transmitting the same message for what might have been centuries. Alina authorized a small expedition to investigate, consisting of Cade, Jonas, and 2 specialists equipped with radiation-proof environmental suits. What they found on the surface was the remains of a human outpost, buildings now collapsed, equipment corroded by the toxic atmosphere, and the skeletal remains of what had once been synthetic humans, designed to withstand conditions that would kill their biological creators. "They were here," Jonas reported back to the Aurora, his voice thick with emotion. "Humans were here, Captain, but they've been gone for a long time." In the central complex of the abandoned outpost, they discovered the source of the SOS signal, an ancient computer system that had somehow maintained power over the centuries. When they accessed its database, they found not a plea for rescue, but a virus-encoded data repository, a single knowledge record revealing that the final group of humans had once set foot on this planet centuries ago. "They left a message," Cade reported, "and coordinates, another location, further into what they called the Blue Star Band." "Another wild chase?" Jonas wondered aloud. "No," Cade replied, studying the ancient data. "This is different. The message says they established a permanent settlement there, a place where humanity could continue. Hope, rekindled from the ashes of disappointment." Alina ordered the coordinates extracted and set a new course for the mysterious Blue Star Band, a small galaxy located just beyond the void. As they approached their new destination, sensors detected a larger Centra fleet waiting for them, positioned directly in their path and heavily armed with weapons capable of destroying the Aurora completely. "They must have tracked us from Verona," Jonas said grimly. "And this time, they're not taking any chances." "All Centra vessels are at battle stations," the tactical officer confirmed. "They're forming a blockade pattern. There's no way through without engaging them directly." "And we can't win that fight," Alina acknowledged. The Aurora, still damaged from their previous encounter with Centra, stood no chance against the assembled fleet. "We could turn back," Cade suggested. "Find another route." "There is no other route," Alina said quietly. "And no turning back, not when we're this close." Beyond the Centra blockade lay the Blue Star Band, and potentially, the last human colony in the galaxy. Everything they had sacrificed, everyone they had lost on this journey, would be meaningless if they turned away now. "I need options," Alina said to her assembled senior staff. "Ways to get past that blockade without destroying ourselves in the process." "We could try negotiating," Mai suggested. "Offer Centra something valuable enough to let us pass." They want everything we have, Jonas pointed out. Our entire genetic repository. That's not a negotiation. It's surrender. What about a diversion? Cade asked. We still have shuttles. If we created a sufficient distraction, the Aurora might slip through while they're occupied. They'd destroy any shuttle we sent, the tactical officer objected, and then come after us anyway. The discussion continued. Various options proposed and dismissed as impractical or suicidal. Until finally, Alina raised her hand for silence. I have a plan, she said, but it comes with significant risk. Her proposal was both audacious and desperate. The Aurora itself would act as a decoy, engaging the Centra fleet directly to draw their attention. Meanwhile, a small team would take the last functioning long-range shuttle and attempt to slip past the blockade to reach the coordinates on the far side. It's a one-way trip for the shuttle team, Alina concluded. The range isn't sufficient for a return journey, but if they find the colony, if humans are truly living there, they can potentially send help back for the Aurora. And if they find nothing, Mai asked, then at least we'll know. Alina replied simply. And the Aurora will continue its mission elsewhere, preserving what remains of humanity for as long as possible. The plan divided the senior staff. Some argued it was too risky, placing too much hope on an uncertain outcome. Others believed it was their best chance, perhaps their only chance, to fulfill their mission. Who would go on the shuttle? Jonas finally asked. I've selected 3 crew members whose skills would be most valuable if a colony is found, Alina said. Cade, for his engineering expertise, Mai, for her medical and ecological knowledge, and you, Jonas, as pilot. And you? Cade asked, though he already knew the answer. I stay with the Aurora, Alina said firmly. My responsibility is to this ship and its crew. I'll lead the diversion and ensure as many of our people survive as possible. The room fell silent as the implications of her plan sank in. The Aurora would likely suffer severe damage in the confrontation with Centra. Many more lives might be lost, and the shuttle team would be stranded, one way or another, with no guarantee of finding anything at their destination. When do we launch? Jonas asked finally. As soon as the shuttle is prepared, Alina replied. Before Centra detects our preparations and adjusts their blockade. The next 12 hours were a flurry of activity, as the shuttle was equipped with everything the team might need for their mission. Essential supplies, medical equipment, data cores containing key portions of the Aurora's knowledge base. Anything that might prove useful in establishing contact with a lost human colony. As the launch time approached, Alina met with the shuttle team in the hangar bay. Cade stood rigidly, his face an expressionless mask that betrayed none of the emotions he must be feeling. Mai's eyes were red-rimmed but determined, her posture straight, despite the weight of responsibility she carried. Jonas paced nervously, unable to contain his energy even in this solemn moment. You understand what's at stake, Alina said. It wasn't a question. We do, Mai answered for all of them. And we're ready. The odds are against you, Alina continued. But if anyone can succeed in this mission, it's the 3 of you. Find our people. Bring humanity back together. That's your primary objective now. And the Aurora, Cade asked. Will survive, Alina said with more confidence than she felt. We've endured worse than Centra. The final preparations were completed, and the shuttle team boarded their vessel. Alina watched from the launch control room as the bay doors opened, revealing the star-filled void beyond. Launch when ready, she instructed Jonas over the comm. Launching in 3, 2, 1. The shuttle's engines ignited, propelling it out of the bay and into space. Good luck, Alina whispered, though the transmission had already ended. As soon as the shuttle was clear of the Aurora, Alina returned to the bridge and initiated the next phase of the plan. The Ark ship accelerated toward the Centra blockade, its weapon systems, rarely used in its long journey, powering up for combat. All hands, Battle stations, Alina ordered. Prepare for engagement with Centra forces. The Centra fleet, detecting the Aurora's approach, responded predictably. Ships moved to intercept, weapons charging, communications demanding immediate surrender. Ignore their hails, Alina instructed. Focus all power on forward shields and propulsion. We need to draw their attention completely. As the Aurora closed with the Centra fleet, the first shots were fired. Energy beams lanced through space, striking the Ark ship's shields with devastating force. The Aurora shuddered under the impact, but its reinforced hull held. Return fire, Alina ordered. Target their lead vessels. Make them believe we're attempting to break through by force. The Aurora's weapons, designed more for defense than offense, struck the Centra ships with limited effect. But it was enough to provoke a full response from the fleet, which converged on the Ark ship with increasing ferocity. Meanwhile, on the small shuttle, Jonas guided their vessel on a circuitous route designed to avoid detection. Using the chaos of the battle as cover, they slipped past the outer perimeter of the Centra blockade. We're through the first line of ships, he reported to Cade and Mai. If we maintain this trajectory, we should clear the blockade entirely in approximately 20 minutes. Assuming they don't detect us, Cade pointed out. The battle is drawing all their attention, Jonas replied, and our emissions are minimal. We appear as little more than space debris on their sensors. Back on the Aurora, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Multiple hits had breached the ship's shields, causing damage to several sections. Casualties mounted as emergency teams fought to contain fires and seal hull breaches. Shield integrity at 28% and falling, the tactical officer reported. We can't sustain this level of assault much longer. Alina checked the tactical display. The shuttle had nearly cleared the blockade, but the Aurora was taking devastating damage. They needed to hold out just a little longer. Divert all non-essential power to shields, she ordered. Maintain defensive fire, but prioritize survival over inflicting damage. As the battle raged, Commodore Delgado himself contacted the Aurora, his face appearing on the main view screen with an expression of cold triumph. You've made a grave miscalculation, Captain Voss, he said. Your ship is crippled, your crew dying. Surrender now, and I may still be merciful. You underestimate the Aurora, Alina replied calmly. And you underestimate humanity's will to survive. Delgado's eyes narrowed. There is no survival here, Captain. Only the choice between surrender and destruction. There's always another choice, Alina said. And with that, she cut the transmission. Turning to her tactical officer, she gave the order she had been holding in reserve. Initiate Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega, a last resort measure that would overload the Aurora's power core, creating an electromagnetic pulse powerful enough to temporarily disable any ship within a certain radius. It was a desperate gambit, one that would leave the Aurora nearly powerless, but might give them a chance to escape in the confusion. Protocol Omega initiated, the tactical officer confirmed. Core overload in 30 seconds. All hands, brace for power loss, Alina announced shipwide. Emergency systems only after pulse discharge. As the countdown reached 0, the Aurora's lights dimmed, then brightened to blinding intensity as the power core released its accumulated energy in a single, massive burst. The pulse rippled outward, washing over the Centra fleet like an invisible tide. One by one, the Centra ships went dark, their systems overloaded by the unexpected surge. In the sudden silence that followed, the Aurora drifted, its own systems barely functioning at minimal capacity. Status report, Alina called out. Minimal power remaining, came the response from engineering. Life support is functional but limited. Propulsion is offline. Weapon systems are non-operational. And the Centra fleet? Disabled, but temporarily. Estimate they'll begin recovering systems within 30 to 40 minutes. It was enough. The shuttle had cleared the blockade entirely, proceeding toward the coordinates of the potential colony. And the Aurora, though severely damaged, had survived the encounter. "Begin emergency repairs," Alina ordered. "Prioritize life support and propulsion. We need to be able to move before Centra recovers." As repair teams worked frantically to restore the Aurora's systems, Alina opened a ship-wide channel. Her voice, steady despite the dire circumstances, reached every functioning section of the vessel. "This is Captain Voss. We have succeeded in our primary objective. The exploration team has passed the blockade and is proceeding to the coordinates. The Aurora has sustained significant damage, but we endure, as humanity has always endured in the face of adversity." She paused, gathering her thoughts before continuing. "Some of you may be wondering if the cost has been too high, if the losses we've suffered on this journey have been worth the uncertain promise that lies ahead. I cannot answer that for you. What I can say is this: every person who has given their life in this mission has done so in service to a greater purpose, ensuring that humanity does not end with us." Throughout the ship, crew members paused in their tasks to listen, drawing strength from their captain's words. "Whether the shuttle team finds a thriving colony, or nothing at all, we have fulfilled our duty. We have carried the torch of human existence forward, refusing to let it be extinguished without a fight. And that, I believe, is what defines us as a species. Not our victories, but our refusal to surrender, even in the darkest hours." As the Aurora's crew rallied to repair their damaged vessel, the shuttle carrying Cade, Mai, and Jonas approached the Blue Star Band, a small galaxy characterized by its unusually high concentration of blue-white stars. The coordinates led them to a planet on the outer edge, a world that preliminary scans suggested had a viable atmosphere and moderate radiation levels. "It looks habitable," Mai said with cautious optimism as they entered orbit. "The atmosphere contains oxygen, nitrogen, and trace gases consistent with biological activity." "Any signs of civilization?" Cade asked. Jonas adjusted the sensors. "Nothing immediately obvious from orbit, but there are energy readings coming from the northern hemisphere, inconsistent with natural phenomena." They selected a landing site near the energy readings and began their descent. As they entered the atmosphere, the shuttle was suddenly buffeted by unexpected turbulence. "Plasma storm!" Jonas called out, fighting the controls. "It wasn't visible on our scans." The shuttle bucked and shuddered as it plunged through layers of superheated plasma that swirled through the upper atmosphere. Warning alarms blared as the external temperature sensors registered dangerous spikes. "Hull integrity compromised," Cade reported. "We're losing stabilizers." Jonas fought to maintain control as they plummeted toward the surface, the ground rushing up to meet them with alarming speed. At the last possible moment, he managed to level their descent enough to prevent a catastrophic crash, but the landing was still brutal. The shuttle skidded across rocky terrain, its hull screaming in protest until it finally came to rest at the edge of what appeared to be a massive crater. "Everyone all right?" Jonas asked, releasing his harness with shaking hands. Mai nodded, already checking for injuries. "Bruised but functional. Cade?" The engineer was examining the shuttle's systems through a damaged console. "The shuttle won't fly again," he reported grimly. "Not without major repairs. And our communication array is completely destroyed. We can't contact the Aurora." "So we're stranded," Jonas said. "We were always stranded," Cade reminded him. This mission was one way from the start. They gathered what supplies had survived the crash and prepared to explore their surroundings. The planet's surface was harsh, a landscape of jagged rock formations and sparse vegetation adapted to the high radiation levels. The sky above them roiled with the plasma storm that had caused their crash, casting an eerie red glow over everything. "The energy readings are coming from within that crater," Jonas said, consulting their portable scanner. "About 2 kilometers from our position." "Then that's where we go," Mai decided. They set out across the forbidding terrain, each step a reminder of how far they were from the relative safety of the Aurora. The plasma storm intensified as they walked, forcing them to seek shelter in a cave-like formation carved into the crater wall. "We can't continue until the storm passes," Cade stated, watching as bolts of plasma energy struck the ground outside their shelter. "It's too dangerous." "How long will that take?" Jonas asked. "Impossible to predict on an unfamiliar planet," Mai replied. "Could be hours. Could be days." As they settled in to wait out the storm, Jonas explored deeper into the cave, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Guys," he called back, his voice echoing strangely. "You need to see this." Mai and Cade joined him, their lights illuminating what Jonas had discovered, a metallic door set into the rock face, its surface etched with symbols that appeared to be an ancient form of human language. "This is artificial," Cade said, running his hand over the door's surface. "Constructed with advanced technology, but definitely human in origin." "Can you open it?" Mai asked. Cade examined the locking mechanism, which appeared to respond to a specific sequence of pressure points. After several attempts, there was a deep rumbling sound, and the door slid open to reveal a tunnel leading downward into darkness. "Well," Jonas said with forced cheer, "who wants to explore the mysterious tunnel on the possibly uninhabited planet?" They proceeded cautiously, their lights revealing a passage that had clearly been constructed rather than naturally formed. The walls were smooth, lined with the same metallic material as the door, and marked with occasional symbols that Cade identified as directional indicators. The tunnel descended steeply for nearly a kilometer before opening into a vast underground chamber. And there, in the artificial light of an ancient but still functioning power system, they found what they had been searching for: people, human beings, living in a subterranean colony built to withstand the harsh conditions of the planet's surface. "Intruders!" The shout came from a guard station near the entrance to the chamber. Within moments, they were surrounded by people wielding primitive but effective weapons, spears with tips that glowed with energy, and slings loaded with what appeared to be condensed plasma. "We come in peace," Mai said quickly, raising her hands. "We're human, like you." "Outsiders," one of the guards said. A woman whose weathered face suggested a hard life lived in harsh conditions. "How did you find this place?" "We followed coordinates left by your ancestors," Cade explained. "On a planet several light years from here. There was a message, an SOS beacon." The woman's eyes narrowed. "The beacon of remembrance. It was never meant to bring others here. It was a memorial to those we left behind." "Please," Jonas interjected. "We've come a long way. We believed we were the last humans in the galaxy until we found your beacon." The woman studied them for a long moment, then made a decision. "Bring them to Marisol. She will decide their fate." They were led deeper into the underground complex, which revealed itself to be a sprawling community of interconnected chambers and tunnels. Everywhere they looked, they saw signs of human adaptation to this subterranean environment. Hydroponic gardens growing under artificial light, living quarters carved from the rock, children playing in communal spaces. "There must be over 100 people here," Mai whispered in awe. "More," their guide replied, overhearing her. 178 souls in total, the stellar Nomads. We call ourselves the last free humans in the galaxy." They were brought to a central chamber where a woman waited, seated on a simple chair that nonetheless conveyed authority. Marisol Vega was older than most they had seen, her hair streaked with gray, her face lined with the responsibility of leadership. But her eyes were sharp and missed nothing as she assessed the newcomers. "So," she said when they had been presented to her, "you found the beacon of remembrance, and you followed it here, despite the warnings left by our ancestors." "Warnings?" Jonas asked. "The message we found spoke only of a settlement, a place where humanity could continue." "The warning was in the location itself," Marisol replied. "Isolated, difficult to reach, protected by natural barriers." Our ancestors chose this place precisely because they did not wish to be found. Why? Kate asked. Why hide away when humanity was on the brink of extinction? Marisol's expression hardened. Because it was humanity itself that brought about that extinction. The Great Annihilation was not a natural disaster or an alien attack, as some believed. It was the culmination of humanity's own self-destructive tendencies. Our ancestors chose isolation as the only way to prevent history from repeating itself. But we've come from the Aurora, Mai explained. An ark ship designed to preserve human genetic diversity and cultural heritage. We've been searching for other survivors for generations. The Aurora. Marisol spoke the name with a mixture of recognition and distaste. Yes, we know of it. The Great Ark, carrying the seeds of the old world, the world that destroyed itself. Our histories speak of it as both miracle and menace. It's neither, Kate argued. It's simply a vessel, carrying what remains of humanity's legacy. And now, it's in danger. We came ahead while the ship engaged a hostile force, the Centra Fleet. Many may have died to give us this chance to find you. Marisol leaned forward. And what did you hope to find? A lost tribe eager to rejoin your wandering ark? We have built something here. Engineer. A society in balance with its environment. Even one as harsh as this. We have learned from the mistakes of our ancestors. We hope to find hope, Mai said simply. To know that humanity continued beyond our fragile vessel. To ensure our species wouldn't end with the Aurora. Something in Mai's words seemed to reach Marisol, but her expression remained guarded. You are welcome to rest and recover from your journey, but I make no promises beyond that. The Council will meet to decide what relationship, if any, we wish to have with your Aurora. As they were led away to guest quarters, Jonas whispered to his companions, Not exactly the warm welcome I was hoping for. They're cautious, Mai replied. And with good reason. They've survived here for generations by being careful. But they're human, Cade said, a note of wonder in his voice. Living, breathing humans who aren't from the Aurora. Do you understand what that means? Humanity isn't ending. It's continuing, evolving, adapting to new environments. In the days that followed, they learned more about the community that called itself the Stellar Nomads. Despite their name, they had been settled in this underground complex for over 2 centuries, having migrated from the planet where they'd left the beacon. They had developed a society that blended ancient technologies with natural adaptations to their environment, a harmony that allowed them to thrive despite the harsh conditions above ground. Cade spent his time examining their power systems and environmental controls, marveling at the ingenious solutions they had developed to problems the Aurora solved with brute force and abundant resources. Mai studied their medical practices and genetic adaptations, noting how they had evolved slight differences to better survive in their high-radiation environment. Jonas became something of a storyteller, sharing tales of the Aurora's journey with children who had never seen the stars up close. But beneath the surface of their integration into the community, tensions remained. Marisol and her council debated endlessly about what to do with the newcomers and, by extension, with the Aurora, if it survived its encounter with the Centra Fleet. They fear us, Cade observed during a private moment with Mai and Jonas. Or rather, they fear what we represent, a connection to the past they've worked so hard to move beyond. Can you blame them? Mai asked. Their entire society is built on the premise that isolation saved them from humanity's self-destructive nature. But isolation isn't the answer, Jonas argued. Not in the long term. Their genetic pool is limited, their resources finite. Eventually, they'll need the diversity the Aurora can provide. The debate came to a head when Marisol summoned them to the control room of the underground complex, a chamber filled with ancient but functional monitoring equipment that kept track of conditions on the surface and maintained the life support systems for the entire community. "Our sensors have detected a vessel entering orbit," she informed them. "Is it your Aurora?" Kate examined the readings. "It's too small to be the Aurora, and the energy signature? It's Centra." "They followed us," Jonas realized with horror. "Somehow, they tracked our shuttle." "Not just one ship," Marisol said grimly. "Our long-range sensors show a fleet assembling in high orbit. They're scanning the surface." "They're looking for us," Mai said. "Or rather, for what they believe we found. A human colony with valuable genetic material." Marisol's face hardened. "So you've brought our ancient enemies to our doorstep. The very forces our ancestors fled from." "The Centra weren't around when your ancestors settled here," Cade pointed out. "Not by that name, perhaps," Marisol countered. "But opportunists who would exploit others for gain? Those have existed as long as humanity itself." The situation deteriorated rapidly. The Centra ships began landing parties, clearly searching for the source of the energy readings they had detected. And to make matters worse, the plasma storm intensified, threatening to breach the upper levels of the underground complex. "The storm's unusually powerful," one of the Nomad technicians reported. "It's destabilizing our outer shield arrays. If it continues, we could lose containment in the oxygen generation systems." "Can we reinforce the shields?" Marisol asked. "Not without redirecting power from life support," came the grim reply. "And even then, it might not be enough." Cade stepped forward. "I might be able to help. The Aurora's engineering principles could be adapted to strengthen your shields without compromising life support." Marisol hesitated, clearly torn between accepting help from an outsider and protecting her people. Finally, she nodded. "Show us." Working alongside the Nomad engineers, Cade developed a modification to their shield system that would use the plasma storm itself as a power source, channeling the energy back into the protective barrier. It was a brilliant solution, but implementing it would require someone to venture to the surface and manually reconfigure the external shield emitters. "I'll go," Cade volunteered. "I know the modifications best." "You'll need a guide," Marisol said. "Someone who knows the surface terrain." To everyone's surprise, she added, "I'll accompany you." The journey to the surface was treacherous. The plasma storm had intensified to the point where bolts of energy regularly struck the ground, superheating the rock and creating localized magnetic anomalies that interfered with their equipment. Cade and Marisol made their way carefully to the primary shield emitter, a massive structure partially buried in the side of the crater. As they worked to reconfigure the emitter, a Centra search party appeared on the ridge above them, drawn by the energy signatures of the equipment. "Down!" Marisol hissed, pulling Cade behind the emitter as energy weapons fire lanced through the space where they had been standing. "We need to complete the modifications," Cade said. "Otherwise, the complex will lose containment." "And we need to not get killed by Centra," Marisol countered. The situation seemed impossible. They couldn't abandon their task. But continuing meant exposing themselves to Centra fire. Then, just as the search party began to descend toward their position, the plasma storm provided an unexpected ally. A massive bolt struck the ridge, sending the Centra troops scrambling for cover and triggering a localized rockslide that temporarily blocked their path. "Now's our chance," Cade said. They worked frantically to complete the modifications, Cade's hands moving with practiced precision despite the dangerous conditions. As the final connections were made, the shield emitter hummed with new energy, drawing power from the very storm that threatened to destroy it. "It's working," Marisol said with wonder as the shield stabilized, creating a visible dome of energy that extended down to encompass the entire underground complex. But their success was short-lived. As they prepared to return to the safety of the complex, a secondary plasma surge struck the emitter, causing a catastrophic overload in the control systems. The structure began to collapse, the ground beneath them shaking with the force of the energy release. "Run!" Cade shouted, pushing Marisol toward the entrance to the complex. She stumbled forward, then turned back to see Cade trapped beneath a fallen section of the emitter housing. Despite the imminent danger, she rushed back to help him. "Leave me," Cade urged, as she struggled to lift the debris. "The shield will hold now, but you need to get back to the complex and initiate the final sequence." "I'm not leaving you to die," Marisol grunted, straining against the weight. "This isn't about me," Cade said, his voice steady despite the pain. "It's about your people, and the Aurora's people. Humanity's future depends on you completing what we started." In that moment, as the storm raged around them and the ground continued to shake with increasing violence, Marisol saw something in Cade's eyes that changed her perspective. Not the reckless self-destruction she had associated with the old world, but a selfless commitment to something greater than himself. With a final effort, she managed to free him from the debris, but it was clear he was severely injured. Together, they staggered toward the complex entrance, Cade leaning heavily on Marisol as they navigated the treacherous terrain. They had almost reached safety when the final collapse began. The shield emitter, damaged beyond repair by the plasma surge, exploded with devastating force. The shockwave tore through the area, sending them tumbling toward the entrance. Marisol felt Cade push her forward with his last strength, propelling her through the doorway just as the roof of the passage gave way behind them. When the dust settled, Marisol found herself inside the complex, bruised but alive. Cade was half buried in rubble at the entrance, barely conscious but still breathing. "Get him to medical," she ordered as Nomad security personnel rushed to help. "And seal that breach before we lose atmosphere." In the aftermath of the surface disaster, as Cade fought for his life in the Nomad medical facility, something fundamental shifted in the community's perspective. They had seen an outsider, one of the people they had been taught to fear, risk his life to save theirs. It challenged centuries of isolation and distrust. Meanwhile, the Centra presence on the surface continued to grow as more search parties landed, methodically searching for the source of the energy readings their sensors had detected. It was only a matter of time before they discovered the underground complex, despite the shields that now protected it. In the control room, Mai and Jonas worked with the Nomad technicians to monitor the Centra movements and strengthen the complex's defenses. But everyone knew they were only delaying the inevitable. Without external help, they would eventually be discovered and overwhelmed. "There's something else," one of the technicians reported. "We're detecting another ship entering orbit, much larger than the Centra vessels." "The Aurora," Jonas breathed, hope surging within him. "It must have survived the battle and followed our trail." The scans confirmed his guess. The Aurora had indeed arrived, battered and damaged but still functional. However, it now faced the assembled Centra fleet, which had already begun to move to intercept it. "They're outnumbered and outgunned," Marisol observed grimly. "Even if they wanted to help us, they can't reach the surface through that blockade." "Maybe they don't have to," Mai suggested. "If we could send a signal, let them know we've found you and your people, they might find another way." "Any transmission would be detected by Centra," Marisol pointed out. "It would lead them directly to us." "Not if we use the plasma storm as cover," Jonas said, an idea forming. "The same energy that powers your shields could mask a tightly focused communication beam. We'd need to time it perfectly with the storm cycles, but it could work." The plan was risky, but possible. Using the Nomads' advanced knowledge of the plasma storms and the Aurora's communication protocols, they prepared a message that would cut through the interference just long enough to reach the Ark ship without being detected by Centra. As they worked, Cade regained consciousness in the medical facility. Despite his injuries, he insisted on being brought to the control room to assist with the communication effort. "You should be resting," Marisol told him as he was wheeled in, his body braced with medical support devices. "There'll be time for rest later," Cade replied weakly. "Right now, we need to save both our peoples." With Cade's guidance, they refined the communication parameters, ensuring the message would reach the Aurora with maximum clarity. When everything was ready, they waited for the precise moment when the plasma storm would provide the perfect cover. "Transmitting, now," Jonas announced, activating the communication array. The message was brief, but contained everything the Aurora needed to know. Coordinates for the underground complex, information about the stellar Nomads, and a warning about the Centra presence. Whether it would be enough to save them remained to be seen. On the Aurora, Alina stood on the bridge, surveying the damage their ship had sustained in the battle with Centra. Many sections were still without power, and casualties had been severe, but they had survived, and the emergency repairs had given them enough mobility to follow the shuttle's trajectory to this new world. Now, faced with another Centra blockade, she wondered if they had come all this way only to fail at the final hurdle. "Captain," the communications officer called out suddenly, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's encoded with our protocols." "Put it through," Alina ordered, her heart racing. The message was fragmented, distorted by the plasma storm, but clear enough to understand its significance. The shuttle team had survived. They had found a human colony, the stellar Nomads, living in an underground complex, and they were in danger from Centra forces on the surface. "We need to help them," Alina said immediately. "Options?" "We can't break through the Centra blockade," the tactical officer replied. "Not in our current condition." "And we can't fight our way to the surface," Jonas added. "We'd be destroyed before we reach the atmosphere." Alina studied the tactical display, searching for a solution. The Centra fleet formed a near-perfect blockade around the planet, their ships positioned to intercept any approach. But they were focused on the Aurora, not on what might come from behind them. "What if we don't try to break through?" she said slowly. "What if we go around?" "The auxiliary craft," the tactical officer realized. "They're small enough to slip past the blockade if the Centra are distracted." "Exactly," Alina confirmed. "We launch every functional shuttle and escape pod we have, programmed to descend to the surface at different points. The Centra will have to split their forces to intercept them all. And while they're chasing decoys," Jonas continued, "we take the Aurora itself directly toward the largest concentration of Centra ships." Alina finished. "They'll assume we're making a desperate attack and focus their firepower on us. Meanwhile, a single shuttle, our fastest and best shielded, will slip through the gap we create and make for the coordinates of the underground complex." It was a plan born of desperation, with slim chances of success. But it was the only option they had. "Prepare all auxiliary craft for launch," Alina ordered, "and ready the Aurora for a direct approach toward the Centra flagship." As the crew rushed to implement her orders, Alina recorded a brief message to be broadcast throughout the ship. "This is Captain Voss. The shuttle team has succeeded in their mission. They have found other humans, a colony calling themselves the Stellar Nomads, but they are in danger from Centra forces on the surface. We cannot abandon them, just as we cannot abandon our own people who risked everything to find them." She paused, knowing that what she was about to say would ask more sacrifice of a crew that had already given so much. "The plan I have authorized carries significant risk. The Aurora will engage the Centra fleet directly, creating a diversion that will allow a rescue shuttle to reach the surface. I will not deceive you. The Aurora will likely sustain heavy damage in this action. But this is why we exist. This is why the Aurora was built, to ensure humanity's survival, whatever the cost." The response from the crew was immediate and overwhelming. Volunteers came forward for every position, especially for the dangerous rescue mission to the surface. From the ashes of their losses and the despair of their damaged vessel, a renewed sense of purpose emerged. The plan was set in motion with precision timing. First, the decoy craft launched, spreading out in all directions to confuse the Centra sensors. Then, as the enemy ships began to react, the Aurora itself accelerated toward the heart of the blockade, weapons firing to draw attention to its approach. The Sentra responded as expected, concentrating their firepower on the Arkship. The Aurora's shields, already weakened from the previous battle, began to fail under the onslaught. But it had created the distraction they needed. The rescue shuttle, piloted by one of Jonas's most skilled trainees, slipped through the gap in the blockade and plunged toward the atmosphere. On the surface, the stellar Nomads and the shuttle team watched the space battle unfold through their sensors. They could see the Aurora taking devastating hits as it kept the Sentra fleet occupied, buying time for the rescue shuttle to reach them. "Your captain is sacrificing her ship for us," Marisol said quietly to Mai. "For people she's never even met." "That's who Alina is," Mai replied. "She believes in humanity's future more than her own." The rescue shuttle successfully navigated the plasma storm, using the techniques Jonas had developed to ride the energy currents rather than fight against them. It landed near the entrance to the underground complex, and the pilot established contact immediately. "Aurora Rescue Shuttle to Stellar Nomads. We're here to evacuate as many as wish to leave. The window is narrow. The Aurora cannot maintain the diversion indefinitely." Marisol faced the moment of decision she had been dreading. Should her people abandon the home they had built over generations to join with these outsiders? Or should they maintain their isolation, even if it meant eventual discovery by Sentra? Cade, still weak from his injuries, spoke up. "You don't all have to go, but some should, to ensure your knowledge, your unique adaptations. Your perspective isn't lost if Sentra finds this place. Think of it as diversification, the same principle that's kept your community healthy for centuries." His words resonated with Marisol. The stellar Nomads had survived by adapting, by finding balance with their environment. Perhaps this was simply the next adaptation, not a return to the past, but a new synthesis of both their paths forward. "We will send a delegation," she decided. "Those who wish to go, and those whose skills would be most valuable to both our peoples. The rest will remain here, improving our defenses with what we've learned from you." In the end, 23 Nomads chose to evacuate, a symbolic number that matched the lives lost when the Aurora had last encountered Sentra. They brought with them data crystals containing their historical records, genetic samples, and technical knowledge, the essence of what they had built in their isolation. As they prepared to board the rescue shuttle, Marisol turned to Cade, who insisted on joining the evacuation despite his injuries. "You've given us more than just technology," she told him. "You've shown us that the past doesn't have to define the future. That sacrifice for others isn't just a noble ideal, but a practical necessity for our species' survival." Cade managed a weak smile. "And you've shown us that humanity can adapt and thrive, even in the harshest conditions. The Aurora has been wandering for generations, carrying the past. Your people have been building the future." The loading process was rushed as reports came in of Sentra forces converging on their location, drawn by the rescue shuttle's landing. Mai supervised the transfer of the injured, including Cade, while Jonas worked with the shuttle pilot to calculate the optimal launch window through the plasma storm. "We need to go now," the pilot urged as the last of the volunteers boarded. "The Aurora can't hold out much longer." Marisol stood at the entrance to the shuttle, looking back at the complex that had been her home for her entire life. Some of her people had already retreated deeper inside, preparing to seal the entrances and activate the enhanced defensive systems Cade had helped them implement. "We will survive," she said with quiet confidence, "both here and with you, and someday we will reunite." With that, she boarded the shuttle, and the hatch sealed behind her. The engines ignited, propelling them upward through the turbulent atmosphere, riding the plasma currents as Jonas had taught. Behind them, the entrance to the underground complex disappeared from view, concealed by the defensive measures activated by those who remained. In orbit, the Aurora was barely holding together. Multiple sections had been breached, and fires raged throughout the vessel. The shields were completely down, and the weapon systems had failed. Only the engines still functioned, allowing the ship to maintain its position against the Centra fleet. On the bridge, Alina received the message she had been waiting for. Rescue shuttle has cleared the atmosphere. 23 Nomads aboard, plus our original team. Requesting rendezvous coordinates. Direct them to Emergency Bay 3, Alina ordered. It's the only one still pressurized. The tactical officer looked up from his console. Captain, Centra vessels are breaking off their attack on us. They're moving to intercept the shuttle. Impossible, Alina said. They can't have detected it through the plasma interference. They must have observed the landing and tracked the launch, the officer replied grimly. 3 vessels are on an intercept course. Alina made an instant decision. All remaining power to engines. Move us between the shuttle and the Centra vessels. Captain, without shields? Do it, Alina cut him off. We didn't come this far to lose them now. The Aurora, damaged and vulnerable, moved to intercept the Centra vessels pursuing the rescue shuttle. It was a desperate gambit, placing the Ark ship directly in the line of fire to shield the smaller vessel carrying their people and the Nomad volunteers. The Centra commander, recognizing Alina's strategy, faced a choice: continue pursuing the shuttle, which would mean firing directly through the Aurora and potentially destroying the genetic repository they coveted, or break off the attack. In the end, pragmatism won out. The Centra vessels veered away, unwilling to risk destroying their prize. The rescue shuttle docked with the Aurora in Emergency Bay 3, and the evacuees were rushed aboard. Medical teams were waiting to receive the injured, including Cade, while Mai and Jonas reported directly to the bridge. Captain, Jonas began, his face breaking into a wide smile as he saw Alina. We found them. Actual humans, living on that planet for generations. They've adapted to the radiation, developed their own culture, their own technologies. And 23 of them volunteered to join us, Mai added. Including their leader, Marisol Vega. The rest stayed behind, better protected now thanks to Cade's modifications to their defense systems. Alina nodded, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction despite the dire situation. Then, we've succeeded. Now we just need to survive long enough to ensure that success means something. The tactical officer interrupted. Captain, the Centra fleet is regrouping. They're forming an attack pattern. I think they've decided to disable us completely before attempting to board. How many functional escape pods do we have left? Alina asked. 7, came the reply. Enough for perhaps 200 people, maximum. 200 out of nearly 1,000 crew members. It was an impossible choice. Who would go and who would stay? But Alina had made impossible choices before. Begin evacuation procedures, she ordered. Priority to medical personnel, ecological specialists, and genetic repository staff. And the Nomads. They must all be evacuated. And you, Captain? Jonas asked, though he already knew the answer. My place is here, Alina said simply, with the Aurora. As the evacuation began, Alina made her way to the medical bay where Cade was being treated. Despite the doctor's protests, he was conscious and alert, his engineer's mind already working on solutions. The Centra want the ship intact, he said, when Alina entered. That's their weakness. If they can't have the Aurora in one piece, their entire mission fails. What are you suggesting? Alina asked. A self-destruct sequence, but not a conventional one, Cade replied. We set the power core to overload, but in a very specific way, one that will destroy the genetic repository, but leave the rest of the ship relatively intact. The Centra will detect the power surge and realize what's happening. They'll have to choose between retreating or losing everything they came for. Alina finished the thought. But that would mean sacrificing the repository, the entire genetic heritage of Earth. Not all of it, Cade said. The Nomads carry different genetic markers, adaptations we never developed, and we've already evacuated the key personnel who know how to rebuild a repository from the samples we still have. The future of humanity doesn't depend on those stored patterns anymore. It depends on the living people we've saved. It was a desperate plan, but like all desperate plans in their journey, it carried a seed of hope within its sacrifice. Alina authorized Cade's strategy, and together, they programmed the power core to initiate a cascading failure focused on the genetic repository section. As the final escape pods launched, carrying the last of the prioritized personnel, including the Nomads and key crew members, Alina returned to the bridge. Only a skeleton crew remained, volunteers who had chosen to stay with their captain and their ship until the end. "Sentra vessels are moving into final attack position," the tactical officer reported. "They'll be in optimal firing range in 3 minutes. "Initiate the core sequence," Alina ordered, "and open a channel to the Sentra flagship." Commodore Delgado's face appeared on the view screen, his expression one of triumph tinged with caution. "Have you finally come to your senses, Captain Voss? Are you ready to surrender what's left of your vessel?" "I'm ready to negotiate," Alina replied calmly. "But you should be aware that I've initiated a targeted core overload. In approximately 4 minutes, the entire genetic repository section will be destroyed. The patterns you're so eager to obtain will be lost forever." Delgado's augmented eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." "Check your sensors," Alina suggested. "The power surge is already detectable. You've pursued us across half the galaxy for those genetic patterns. Are you willing to lose them now, when you're so close?" The Sentra commander hesitated, and Alina pressed her advantage. "I propose a compromise. You allow our escape pods safe passage out of this system. In return, I'll give you the abort codes for the overload sequence. You get the repository. We get our lives. Everyone achieves their primary objective." It was a lie, of course. There were no abort codes. The overload was designed to be irreversible once initiated. But Delgado couldn't know that. And by the time he discovered the truth, the escape pods would be well beyond his reach. "Very well," Delgado said after a moment's consideration. "Cease your overload, and we will allow your escape pods to depart unmolested." "The pods must clear the system first," Alina insisted. "Once they're beyond your weapons range, I'll transmit the codes." Delgado's face hardened, but he nodded curtly. "You have 1 hour, Captain, not a minute more." The transmission ended, and Alina turned to her remaining crew. "That should give the pods enough time to reach the jump point. Begin preparations to abandon ship. We'll take the last shuttle ourselves." "But the overload can't be stopped," Jonas pointed out. "When Delgado realizes that—" "We'll be gone," Alina finished for him. "And so will the escape pods." The plan worked exactly as Cade had predicted. The Sentra fleet held position, watching as the escape pods disappeared into the distance, believing they would soon claim their prize. By the time Delgado realized Alina's deception, the overload had reached critical levels, destroying the genetic repository in a controlled explosion that left the rest of the ship intact but worthless to the Sentra. The final shuttle, carrying Alina and the remaining bridge crew, launched just as the repository section detonated. In the confusion, they slipped past the Sentra blockade and set course for the rendezvous point where the escape pods were gathering. When they arrived, they found an impromptu fleet. The escape pods clustered together, with Mai and the medical team already moving between them to check on the evacuees. Cade, despite his injuries, had established a communication network linking all the pods together, and the Nomads, led by Marisol, were already sharing their knowledge of survival in harsh conditions with their new companions. "What now, Captain?" Jonas asked, as they surveyed the assembled pods. "We have no ship, limited supplies, and we're stranded in a hostile region of space." Alina looked out at the makeshift fleet, not just the physical vessels, but the people they contained. Humans from the Aurora, with their knowledge of Earth's heritage and the technology that had sustained them for generations. And humans from the stellar Nomads, with their adaptability, resilience, and fresh perspective on what humanity could become. "Now," she said, "we find a new home, together." From the observation window of her pod, Alina watched as the distant stars glittered against the void. Somewhere out there was a planet where both groups could settle, combining their strengths and building something new from the ashes of what they had lost. The Aurora was gone, but its mission continued. Humanity had found itself again, not just survivors clinging to the past, but pioneers facing the future. As their small fleet of pods began its journey toward a nearby star system that sensors suggested might contain habitable worlds, Alina sent a silent prayer into the cosmos. May at least a small light of humanity continue to exist. In the pod next to hers, Marisol Vega stood at her own viewport, watching the same stars with the perspective of someone who had never traveled beyond her home planet until now. The stellar nomad leader had taken a leap of faith, bringing her people into an uncertain future alongside strangers. But in that uncertainty lay possibility, the chance to forge a new path that honored both their pasts while creating something entirely new. The final image, a small fleet of escape pods gliding through the crimson atmosphere of a distant world, carrying more than 24 people, seeds of hope in the vastness of space.